Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I'm the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Jessica Pharm, who is the Learning and Development Program Manager for Alaska Airlines. Jessica Pharm is a people-first learning and development professional with over a decade of experience helping employees grow, thrive, and lead. With a background spanning HR, talent acquisition, career development, and employee engagement, she focuses on building equitable environments where all employees, especially those from underrepresented groups, can succeed. Jessica is passionate about designing impactful programs, pushing for systems that are just as inclusive as they are effective, and empowering employees to advocate for their own career development. Jessica, it is such an honor to have you on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start by just kind of introducing yourself a little bit more and talking about your role within your company?
Yeah, so as you said, I have a pretty robust background in HR, talent acquisition, learning and development. I've kind of touched it all. My role here, I've been at Alaska for 4 really great years. When I started at Alaska, I actually relocated to Seattle. I'm originally from Wisconsin, and I relocated to take the role as a senior talent acquisition partner. At Alaska, I was there in that role for about a year and a half, and then I decided to transition into learning development. My goal was to always touch every aspect of HR as much as possible. And I was in recruiting for quite some time. I really loved it, but I always had this passion for career development, for learning and development, and an opportunity opened up at Alaska, and I was able to interview. And at that point, I had already made a lot of really great connections, and I was able to transition quite nicely into this new role.
That's awesome. Have you liked Seattle? I mean, I feel like that's a big jump from Wisconsin to
It,
Seattle.
it definitely was a bit of a culture shock coming from Wisconsin to Seattle. But it has been overall very great experience. It's been very well worth it. I guess the biggest shock for me was like how expensive everything was. But you just kind of get used to it once you settle in. And the state itself is gorgeous. There are mountains everywhere. It's just a very beautiful state. So
Yeah.
I've enjoyed my time here.
Well, that's awesome. And it sounds like you've had such a fulfilling career just in these 4 years there, getting to do so many different things. But why don't you talk a little bit about the learners that you oversee and what some of their challenges are?
Yeah, so as a learning and development program manager, again, I manage a number of the programs that we have here at Alaska, and our learners have very different backgrounds. I mean, you have people who are new hires coming into the company. You have people who are being promoted from individual contributors to new leaders, and that is such a learning curve. You have leaders, people who have been in their role for a very, very long time as leaders, and they need continuous development. You also have a subset of the population who, not even a subset, actually a pretty large aspect of the population who are frontline workers and people who have never really had a lot in a way of development, formal development. So we see it across the board, and our role is really to try to reach out and target and develop those people and meet their needs the best way that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And with such a kind of like broad group of folks, what are some of the bigger workforce development challenges that are facing the organization and how do you approach them? How do you navigate those?
Yeah, I mean, again, you have a lot of diversity within this population. So one of the challenges that we have is making sure that our learning programs are meeting the needs of the business, right? We're not creating things in a vacuum. So we're really getting out there, talking to leaders, learning about what's going on, even talking to our employees. We're very survey heavy here at Alaska. We really want to know what's going on. How do we meet people where they are? How do we provide resources that are targeting the needs of these populations and understanding that it's not a one size fit all? So, one great example of that is with our frontline employees. A lot of these folks, like I said, may not have um, for example, college degrees. They may not have a lot in the way of development. And when I say frontline employees, I'm really talking about ramps, customer service. Like they make up a big bulk of our
Yeah.
employees. They also make up a big bulk of the diversity of our company, right? And so they need more resources that are tailored to them. So we have programs where we're doing like workshops on how to write a resume, how to interview, how to use LinkedIn, how to leverage LinkedIn for your development. We have the educational assistance program, which has been amazing. I actually managed that for the entire company.
Wow, that's
And so,
amazing.
yeah, so that program, just when I got it, I really had to like get it, finesse it, make it beautiful because it was really kind of like shoddy when I first got it. But that program itself has touched a lot of people at our company because we offer two forms of educational assistance. We do upfront funding, where we give you the money upfront, and then we also do traditional reimbursement. And I've never worked at a company where they just give you the money upfront.
Yeah.
And that right there closes a huge gap for our population because a lot of employees don't have maybe $1,000, $2,000 to go to school. And so this addresses that. And it's really about understanding the population and making sure that what you're putting out is targeting those people and making sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love what you talk about there with like, understanding what the different groups, what their individual challenges are. Like even with just, getting folks like to understand LinkedIn more. Like a lot of times
Yes.
I feel like some of that stuff is overlooked, but it might be like a small thing and some things that, other folks who are behind a computer all day and have been on LinkedIn their entire career, like take for granted that they understand how to do that, right? So that's
Yeah.
awesome that you have incorporated that. As the skill sets needed for success continue to shift and things are constantly shifting, what strategies does your team use to kind of make sure that your workforce stays adaptable and prepared?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we have to do as learning development professionals is also develop ourselves, right? And understand what skills that we ourselves have, what we don't have, and what do we need to do to be able to close the gap. So you're always in learning mode, even as you are developing learning programs. So, you have AI, you have technology that is rapidly changing all the time. There's new skills that are emerging that you have to assess whether or not your population has it. If they don't, how do we address it? Different needs, you have strategic business needs that also need to be balanced. In addition, people have their own personal development goals that they want to meet as well. So the challenge that we have is how do we make all of this work? How do we connect all of this? Of course, like I said before, we want to make sure our programs are, going tying up to the business and making sure that they make sense, making sure that they are meeting the needs of the population. But then also, how do we encourage people to want to learn? How do we build that learner's mindset? How do we get people to understand that it's a journey and not a destination? And that learning is something that you'll be doing the rest of your life, and that it is a skill set that employers value now. It's no longer, oh, I know everything I need to know, I'm done, and that's it. It really is a skill set that you have to take. So these are all challenges that we are working on here at Alaska. We have some really great programs that we're developing. We're really looking at, what do we need to do from an organizational standpoint, even on our own team? Like, what do we need to do? Do we need to reorg? Do we need to kind of look at the skills our team has to be able to meet those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome and so important right now. Like everything's changing too fast. You can't like you can't
Yeah,
not be with that, right? Like
yeah, you always have to be learning and
yeah,
and just keep that learner's mindset. And I'm a big believer in people learning how to advocate for themselves, and that is a big part of that. It's like you have to we can put all the programs out there, but if you're not taking advantage of them, if you're not seeing the value, if you're not seeing yourself as a learner, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
absolutely. I love that. How does your team kind of evaluate when there's skills gaps in different roles? How do you assess and address those to make sure that everyone is staying agile?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, nothing is built in a vacuum. Nothing is silo. You have to work with your partners. We work with talent management to understand where the gaps that they're seeing. They have a really great line to senior leaders, and those senior leaders provide really great feedback. Our HR business partners are also a critical source of information because they're out in the business. They know what's going on, and they can bring a lot of those really great insights back to us. We also do surveys. We survey, our individual contributor population as well as our leadership. So there's multiple ways to pull that information. And once we start seeing patterns, once we start seeing these skill gaps, that's when we're like, okay, we're noticing a trend where this specific population is lacking in these skills, and this is actually a critical business need. So what do we need to do to be able to address that? And making sure again that we're not just building something and going back to leaders and they're like, oh, but that actually isn't what we need. We're working in tandem with HR business partners, talent management, and our leaders to say, what do we need to do to strategically build something out that hits these points? And
Yeah.
then what are the measures of success? That's also really important because sometimes, you'll say, okay, we built it, it's great. How do we keep it sustainable? What are those measures of success to let us know things are working in our favor?
Yeah. Thank you. You teed up my next question. How do you currently measure the effectiveness of your programs? Do you have
Yeah,
kind of core KPIs that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we as a team this is constantly evolving. We used to have just like what I call happy surveys. Did you take this class? Did it make you happy? Great. But we realize, of course, that's not really getting at the meat of things. And so we now have surveys where we are surveying obviously the participant, the leader. We understand that learning takes time to absorb. It takes time to practice. It takes time to start to really see results. We want to look to see, is this person, changing their behavior 4 months, 6 months, a year from now? Are we seeing promotions? Are we seeing lower numbers of turnover? Because that's also a big issue. You don't offer quality L&D. Are we getting positive feedback from leaders who are saying, hey, I'm noticing that my team is operating at an improved level? These are really important KPIs that, can be a little hard to measure because sometimes it's the human factor, but they are important to keep track of because without that, you don't know whether or not your programs are successful. And we also welcome um, critical feedback, right? I always tell people it's not negative, it's all lessons learned. Sometimes you can build a great program. You've worked with all the stakeholders, you have everything out there, and you put it out into the wild, as I like to say, and then it kind of crashes and burns. And then you're like, oh, what did I miss? And then people come back and say, hey, but this didn't work for this reason. So I'm a big believer in having that constructive feedback in order for us to continue to iterate and make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important, especially like in some instances with frontline workers too, because you're inside, like, can be in such a different environment and be like, hey, I think this is going to work for you. And they're like, no, 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 this doesn't work at all because of these like external factors that you didn't
Oh
consider.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that can be that's a big challenge because when you work in the back office, you have access to laptops and the
Yeah.
internet. You can sit all day and train, but when you're out on the ramp and on the phone with customers and you're
Yeah.
forward facing, your needs are going to be so different. And so a lot of the programs that we've created initially were leader based and back office based. And it's like, well, we have this huge population that don't have access to these things, what can we do to meet people where they are and bring them along? Because if we don't do that, you are going to see turnover. You're going to see people who feel like they're not a part of this journey. And that's why I'm really proud of the educational assistance program that we have, because that touches so many people. And when you look at the data and the numbers of that program, you're seeing a lot of BIPOC employees, a lot of women, a lot of people on the front line who take advantage of that program.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an example of a successful kind of case study or L&D initiative or program that you can kind of point to and be like, this significantly impacted employee performance?
Oh, off the top of my head, I would go back to the educational assistant, but I mean, because that's the one that I manage individually, and I've really had to like bring up, and I can really like
Yeah.
pull to the data. And that's the one that I would say. I mean, we have a number of programs, but like for example, we have a program called Developing Emerging Leaders. It's called Dell, aka Dell. And my coworker actually manages this program. Her name is Sean, and she's been at this company for a very, very long time. She's just a wealth of really great information about the company culture, the history, and all of that. And this program is her baby. I actually went through this program, and it's really identifying high potential employees, whether they're frontline, back office, and putting them through this leader development program, really sharpening their skills, plugging them into the business. And what you get is you work on a team of about 8 to 10 people and you solve an actual business problem. The stakeholders will come to you and say, hey, look, this is a problem that we have or an issue, and we would like for you to not necessarily solve it, but come up with a business case to address it. And for months, you are gathering the data, you're talking to stakeholders, you're going out into the business, and you're learning how to actually come up with solutions that make sense. And at the end of this program, you present to senior leaders of what it is that you did. Like, what was the issue? How did you solve it? What was the method? And what's your recommendation and why? And this program in and of itself has pushed through well over 1,000 people. It's been going on for a number of years. It's one of our most successful programs. Um, a lot of people who have gone through this program have been promoted into other areas of the business. So we have a lot of Dell graduates. Even myself, I was in the program and then I moved into L&D. On my team alone, we had a number of people who were promoted into senior leadership. So it is one of our very visible programs that we have. It's one that a lot of people try to get into because you have to apply and be
Yeah.
selected, but it is a very prestigious program that we offer.
That's awesome. And what a great, like, just win-win-win for everyone. For the business, you're getting like new ideas, you're seeing potentially like new talent, right? Like coming out of that because you're like, oh, this person would be phenomenal at this because they came up with like this challenge and just
Yeah.
wow.
It gives people an opportunity too, because if you're, for example, whether it's an individual contributor or frontline, a lot of people don't get these types of issues every day where you're like, solve a business
Yeah.
case. And so it really stretches a lot of muscles that people didn't know they have. And so you've had a lot of people say, oh, I didn't know I can lead a presentation, or I didn't know I had the ability to get in front of senior leaders and present and share solutions. And it's just a way to really help level the playing field and make a lot of things more accessible to different employees.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. What role does technology play in your programs, and how do you leverage different tools and platforms to really kind of enhance learning and development experiences?
Yeah, so that is an ongoing thing, right? So we're always looking at what technology we currently have. We have our LMS. We are now using LinkedIn Learning as a supplement. I mean, I'm a big proponent of LinkedIn Learning. Um, a lot of people who use it are coming back and saying, I want a license, I want to use more of LinkedIn. I love it. And we're looking at other tools as well. I know there's a lot of talk about AI and what does Chat GPT or Copilot have to do? I mean, I will just say, when it comes to that, that's such new technology. That's so new. And I think a lot of companies are kind of overcorrecting on the whole AI thing. And we're really being very mindful about what that means for us as a business. It's not something that we're just rushing into. It's something that we need to be very thoughtful about, because it is a very new tool. We don't know how it's going to be in a few years, but yeah, we're definitely looking at our technology right now and seeing what do we need to do. When it comes to our learning modules, we used to have a very old school way of where everyone comes into the classroom and everyone physically sits down and they learn. But that's just not the case anymore. We have people so spread out. We have people all over the country, all over the world. Everyone doesn't learn the same way. You now have to make things more modularized. You have to make things more accessible. Even I remember when I was coming up, desktops were a big thing when it came to learning, and you had to sit in front of a desktop and play a video. But now you have to be able to make those same videos accessible on people's phones because not everyone has a laptop, not everyone has a desktop, not everyone's going to sit. So it's always evolving because the population and their needs are evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important. It's like there's always going to be new tech. It's always, you really got to make sure you understand like how and if it's going to be beneficial to your group, your folks.
Yeah,
If
everything is not going to be for you. And
yeah,
so you have to be very careful with that. And that's why when we talk about the AI stuff, we're just kind of like, yeah, everything may not be for us. Everything may not work for our
yeah,
population. You need to just find out what is and then be able to use it as a tool to
yeah.
address the needs that you have as a business.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I think there's a lot of people who have rushed into like AI for like customer service, and in some instances, they're doing a huge disservice to
Yeah.
the folks because it's not fine-tuned yet. It doesn't figure out, and it's just leaving people even more frustrated with the experience because they're not getting the answers or the support they need. And it's like people have started to just like completely say, oh, well, this AI bot can like handle it all. And it's like, no, actually, like it can't. And I think we still need to remember that humans still need like human connection in certain situations. And so like I think that's really a really powerful thing, especially for the industry that you're in, to kind of say that and be cautious of how you use tech, and make
Yeah,
sure it
absolutely.
works for you. Thinking about kind of just learning and development in general, I know you've been in this industry, L&D and HR for, 10 years or so, or more, I think. But, what have you seen over the past 5 years, like that's rapidly evolved? Like, what's a key takeaway for you?
There's quite a bit of things that have been evolving, and that's not even just technology, right? 'Cause that's always going to be a constant. I just think now you have employees who are understand this has been something I've observed for a long time, where they're understanding that in order to stay into the game, you have to have continuous improvement, continuous learning. And so you're now having employees. When I remember I was a recruiter and people will say, well, what development opportunities do you have for me? And that is something that we're seeing more and more of because people are understanding that employers value employees who want to be developed, who want to grow, who want to have access to things that will make them better. And so there really is this hunger for companies to have robust L&D programs. It is a necessity. And you're seeing companies, I'm seeing a lot of hiring on LinkedIn for L&D program managers, L&D specialists, talent management specialists, because now employees are like, hey, I don't just work. Like, this isn't just my job, this is my career. This is very important to me. And I want to make sure that if I'm coming into this company, you are pouring into and supporting and developing me as opposed to me just coming in and working. And that is definitely something that I've seen across the board where companies are realizing that if we don't invest in our employees in this way, pizza parties and ping pong tables, all of that's cute, but people really want to see that level of investment and they don't feel like they should have to go outside of their organizations in order to get it. Because I remember when I was coming up, I'm not that old, but I remember when I was coming up, a lot of career development that I had to get outside of my organization because they didn't have any real robust learning development. But now you can get a lot of really good development at companies because they realize that is a value add to the business.
Absolutely. And as it should be, right? I mean, if,
Mhm.
you're talking about a traditional work week, you're there 40 hours a week. Like, and now we're in a place where like if you have kids or have a family or want that, like both parents are usually working. And so it's like, how can anyone on top of like working their 40 hours a week be going outside of their work
Oh
out
yeah.
to get any kind of like development, you know? So I think that's right on track and definitely a good takeaway, you know, that we've seen over the
Mhm.
past 5 or 10 years or so. Kind of on the flip side of that question, you know, how are you kind of using technology or looking to what's coming in the future over the next 5 years to enhance employee experiences? Like what's one thing you would say people need to like really make sure that they're on top of as, you know, the next 5 years come about?
Oh man, I would say that's kind of a tricky question. I was, when it comes to technology, being mindful of how people feel about certain forms of technology.
Mhm.
Because right now, as I mentioned before, you have this, you have companies who are really jumping on all of these different this technology hype when it comes to AI and other stuff. And we're losing the humanity aspect of it. And we're not really engaging our employees. We're not bringing them along. We're just pushing it on them. And so we really need to educate and say, hey, look, we have a lot of technology that's coming out and we need to use this technology, but how we use it matters. And, we want to use it in service to the business and not as a way of being able to cut people and, shed jobs. And, we have to have honest, transparent conversations about the all of this advancement in technology. What does it mean for you as an employee? What does it mean for the business? How can you use technology to make yourself better, right? So it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right.
Technology has been amazing. It's all about companies being transparent and honest about the tools that they want to bring in, how those tools will be used, and how those tools may or may not impact their employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important though, even just like being aware of how people feel about technology. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't really like that's never really come up, but I think that's so important. And like remembering people are at kind of if people are going to use it, if you want it to like help folks, like you've got to understand how they're feeling about it for
Yeah,
sure.
because you have a lot of fear right now. I
Right.
mean, just truthfully, you
Right.
do have a lot of people who are just afraid of like, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be obsolete? And there may be some roles that become obsolete over time. That's the evolution of work, right? But there is a right way and there's a wrong way to introduce things to bring people along. If you want adoption, you absolutely have to bring people along from the very beginning. You can't just spring it on people. So I think in the next 5 years, you're gonna see a lot of leaders be even more transparent about what the new landscape is gonna look like in regards to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, to kind of close on a, you know, positive, inspiring note, what's the most important lesson that you've learned as a leader that you would pass on to someone just starting out on their leadership journey?
I would say I think everyone is a leader in their own way. I think we get kind of caught up in titles. We get caught up in, oh, how many people reported to me? You can be a leader and not have anyone reporting to you. You can be a leader and don't have any title that denotes that at all. I think leadership is how you see yourself, how you carry yourself, the influence that you have, how people see you. I think those things are very important, and that's something that I've had to learn throughout my career. I don't have a big fancy title. I don't have a ton of people or anyone really reporting into me, but you lead with influence. And so I've been doing this for quite some time. I share a lot of really great content on LinkedIn. And so all of those things have built that influence and that leadership as a result of that. So I think just knowing that you you lead yourself, you lead from within. You don't necessarily have to be an actual formal leader. That's just a job title that can come and go. It really is about you as a person.
Absolutely. I love that. It's great, great advice for like anyone in life too. I mean, I feel
Right.
as a parent, that's really great advice. It's like I,
Parents are leaders,
yeah,
are the ultimate leaders. You're leading people and people are watching you, and that
yeah.
right there is really important to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that applies for all walks of life and is really, really great advice. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today on the NovoEd Talks podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you and talking about L&D. I love this work.
That's awesome. Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NovoED Talks.